Hi guys, it's Abby, and I'm going to talk to you about Mercury in Aries. This is my bat cave. See, it looks like stars up top, or clouds. No stars yet. Um, so, Mercury in Aries. I always feel like I cheat Aries because it's the first video that I do in any series, and by the time I get to Pisces, I'm like an expert on explaining things, but I always forget things when it comes to Aries because it's right at the start. So sorry, Aries, I don't mean it. But Mercury in the chart is how you communicate. So it's how you use logic. It's how you basically take in information and then kind of process it in your head and then sort of spit it back out into the world, and it's how you make sense of things like logically. So you don't really develop your Mercury very well until you're usually of school age. You start obviously when you start to read, sort of is the beginnings of Mercury, and obviously language comes first, but a lot of children are more about their moon sign. They're more acting out their moon sign than anything else because children are all instinct until they develop like their ego, which comes later, and the way they can kind of think not subjectively. So Aries is a very subjective sign, and it's a fire sign, and it's a cardinal sign. So that means that it is very creative. It has a lot of like emotional energy, and it's subjective. It just means that Aries doesn't really think objectively very well because Aries is a first sign in the zodiac, so it has to do with the self. It's all about, from my point of view, from how I see the world. Aries is not necessarily a self-centered sign, but it comes from a very like just this is me, this is my experience, this is how I experience the world. So people with Mercury in Aries often use the word I and me a lot because they're not trying to be like self-absorbed. It's not necessarily that way, but they just have to relate everything to themselves and how they see and how they view things, and they relate to other people who tell them stories by saying things like, yeah, I had a friend who did that, or this happened to me once, and that's their way of relating to the world. A cardinal sign means that the sign likes to start things because Aries represents the beginning of spring. So Mercury in Aries loves to start things. I have Mercury in Aries, and I used to read when I was little like 5 books at once because I keep wanting to start books, or I'm a writer, so I would write, and I still do this, I'd start stories and I would just never finish them, or I would put them on the shelf to do later because I just wanted to start things more and more and more, like more beginnings of things. So that's very Mercury in Aries. Some of the positives of Mercury in Aries are that it's very honest. So Mercury and Aries can't really lie very well. They say it as it is. They call them as they see them. They they can be really like kind of dumb in the way they say things. Like they might speak before they think, or say things that they don't really think about the social ramifications of before they say them. And that can come back to bite them, obviously. Aries wants to be first at everything because it has this sort of innate instinct, and instincts are, I have to run faster than the slowest person in the pack because they're the one that's going to get eaten by the predator. It's like very basic evolutionary stuff. So Aries, regardless of how aggressive or assertive the person is, anything in Aries has this feeling of I have to be first. I have to be the fastest. I have to be the strongest at this. So Aries will learn things like that. Like Aries strives to learn things as fast as possible and then be the first to succeed. And it's a competition thing, but it might not be overt. Like they're good at sports maybe, but they don't necessarily have to show that sort of competitive drive and everything. It's almost a competition with themselves. Like, they might like games where they can sort of keep trying to beat their own time, or like things where they can just go faster and faster and faster. If you're into music and you have Mercury and Aries, you might do things like, you might learn really fast, like learn a piece really fast if you play a musical instrument, but you might push the tempo. Like, you might have a problem, like you might like fast pieces, so if it's like adagio, you might have trouble being like, stay to the slow beat, because your whole thing is to learn things and then do them fast as you possibly can. Mercury in Aries likes to get from A to B with the simplest path possible, so they're not gonna like, they don't beat around the bush. They can come across a little bit like harsh to people. They might not mean it, but they are ruled by Mars, and that's the sign of war. So Mercury in Aries can be a little feisty and aggressive to some people, a little bit much for some people to handle. Not very socially graceful, but they mean well, and they do learn fast. So if you have Mercury retrograde in Aries, you are going to take more time than others. Like, if you have Mercury in Aries direct, you probably learn things super fast when you were a child. You might have been the first in your family to talk at like the youngest age, the first to write, like the youngest to write things. But if you have Mercury retrograde, you're going to be super concerned about things coming across like honestly, and you might take some time, because what you want to do is you want to express yourself without like making it superficial or putting your foot in your mouth, because you might, as a young child, have a lot of problems when you say things and then they come across to other people like poorly. So you might have a lot of social situations where things don't really work out for you when you're a child, and as a result, your whole life you spend thinking before you act a little bit more than the Mercury direct in Aries, so that you can kind of like express your full self. So it's going to be a little bit difficult for you in the beginning, just because you're going to come across not meaning to be rude to people or aggressive, but you might be coming across that way, and your feedback that you're getting is poor. And that's when you're young, and although it continues as an adult, you learn a little bit faster than Mercury direct in Aries to think before you speak, which is a good thing. And you do well during times of Mercury retrograde, which is 3 times a year for about 3 weeks each period, when Mercury seems to be going backwards in the sky. It's just from our earthly standpoint, it's almost like when you are running, like you catch up with a train that's going slower and it appears to stop for a little bit, and then it starts to look like it's going backwards, but really it's just the physics of you moving faster. That's the same thing with Mercury. It's going faster around the sun than we are, so it appears to go backwards sometimes. And like what that represents on Earth is a time of like communication breakdowns and chaos. So you would actually do better during those times if you have Mercury retrograde in your chart. That's for everybody, but for Aries, it's like you might actually be more direct, be able to speak faster without like stifling yourself. You might even have like a bit of a stutter normally, which eases up when you have a retrograde period of the transiting Mercury is retrograde. And you might be clumsy if you have Mercury retrograde in Aries, because you like constantly want to go, but you have learned from practice to like kind of hinder yourself. So you might be a little bit like when you speak, you might just be a little something off, like I said, like a stutter, or like almost like you're trying to force yourself to go forward, but something's hindering you. But that would ease up during those times of Mercury retrograde, and you'd be able to express yourself more, because it's so creative. It's such a creative sign, and oftentimes Mercury in retrograde, if it has connections with Neptune, is very like artistic in expression. Like I said, anything with Venus involved would be musical. With Neptune, it would be like maybe photography, because that's a very quick way of doing artistic expression, which Aries would like, or you know, anything having to do with like something that's instant, because Aries loves instant. Video, you know, that would be something if Neptune is involved with your Mercury. But with Mercury retrograde in Aries, it might be more difficult to express so instantly. So you might have to wait for times of retrograde in order to really let your feelings out. In the meantime, you know, you'd be like really contemplating it more. So that's Mercury in Aries. Expect these videos to get better, because that's what always happens to my videos. We'll be experts by Pisces. And you'll get more shots of my bat cave, hopefully. Alright, thanks for watching.